I want to welcome you all here tonight to our monthly speakers meeting. I'm Aubrey Adams. I'm the director of Every Brain Matters, a community that's primary mission is to support and advocate for families impacted by today's industrialized marijuana. Randy and Heather Bacchus, I said it right. Randy and Heather Bacchus are licensed realtors in Minnesota and Wisconsin. They have 3 daughters, and they are also parents of a forever 21-year-old son, Randy Michael. Their son started using marijuana at the age of 15, and he experienced cannabis-induced psychosis on July 17th, 2021, and then died by suicide. After their son's passing, Randy and Heather learned how the potency of today's cannabis can impact the adolescent brain. They learned that cannabis can cause psychosis, depression, anxiety, and suicidal ideation. And it is now their mission to share this information with students, parents, and professionals, and to prevent further tragedy from other families through their own nonprofit called Be Extraordinary, Be You. Thank you for being here tonight, Randy and Heather, and it's all yours.
Thank you, Aubrey. Thank you for giving us time here.
Thanks, Aubrey. Thanks for letting us be here. And you've helped us too throughout our journey. So we really appreciate that.
So I'll try to go back and forth because I don't want to make it just all slides. But basically our son, Randy, he passed away when he was 21, took his own life. And in doing so, we're going to kind of go through a little bit of the backstory. We'll go through a little bit, so I won't keep on saying we'll go through the backstory. We've got a video that's about 10 minutes that we'll show that we've tried to cut down. It just shows his use from when he was really getting deep into this and then to his death, and then kind of talk about some of the hope and some of the positive things that we see as we continue to move forward. The next slide. Okay.
So basically, like Aubrey said, we have 3 daughters. The oldest is 26, and then we have a 21-year-old and a 19-year-old. Randy would be 24 if he was with us today. But basically, we had a pretty normal family lifestyle. We tried to do everything we possibly could to raise happy and healthy children. We talked about drugs and tried to give a clear message to our kids because both of us do come from families where addiction is an issue. So we were never okay with marijuana use, but we tried to be understanding, and we did family dinners, went to church, did all those things that we hoped would give us happy, healthy, and successful children. So
I'll go to the next slide. Sorry. Okay. Why is it taken? There you go.
So this is our son, Randy. And as you can see, he was a pretty normal kid. He played sports, youth hockey, football, lacrosse, and he was very creative. He was also entrepreneurial in spirit. He was quite a jokester, liked to have a lot of fun. And, he didn't always think in a linear way because he had ADHD, but he was very bright and insightful. But unfortunately, by the time he was 15, he was also a little lonesome and looking for social acceptance. So he started using marijuana with our neighbor kids.
So basically in 9th grade, a couple of the neighbor kids that had just graduated high school, he was caught smoking weed with them. And as Heather said, we didn't allow that in our house, but we also didn't realize what today's product was. And he was busted with a couple of kids, and these kids that were going off to college said, they would never do it with him again. Well, we probably grounded him for a short period of time. We tried to give him grace, but 5 months later or 4 months later, whatever, at Christmas time when the kids came home from college, they were caught again. And at this time, Randy was now a sophomore in high school. So we were really frustrated, disappointed, and this was like a second strike. So we go forward. Then in 2016, one night Heather was out of town and I got a phone call from the police that my son was at the park. And so I went and picked him up, and this is about 3 or 4 in the morning. He had a felony amount of edibles with him. He was with a couple other kids. He said it was his product, whether it was or wasn't. We knew we had a problem at that point. We had no idea what these products were at the time.
But I will say we had seen a major shift in Randy's demeanor. He was, at that point, he was really kind of dark and detached. He was, you'd look into his eyes and it was like he almost wasn't there. So we didn't realize that it could be marijuana doing this. We thought he was just being a difficult teenager. And, but in hindsight, now looking back, we know that it was really the marijuana that was causing such disruptive behavior. And he couldn't regulate his moods. And we didn't realize that was a result of that. And we did have him under the care of a counselor at the time, so a therapist, and the therapist was well aware of our struggles. However, even that therapist didn't attribute much to marijuana. He
basically told us that most of the kids that are his age are trying it or using it.
Yes.
And that these kids would be hot boxing, which we had no idea what this stuff was, but kind of, dismissed it like, it's just weed. And, as we all know now that are here, it's more than just weed. This is not the weed that was around 20, 30 years ago. This is not the same product. So after probably 4 or 5 times Randy getting caught and in trouble for problems, we finally sent him to wilderness therapy in Utah. And he went there for 9 weeks. In hindsight, sending him to wilderness therapy, at least for our perspective, probably wasn't the best idea, because he went there and some of these kids were doing things that were worse, the same or worse. And what we did then is we opened up his friendship to people all over the country. And so we were hoping that it would give him some confidence. He'd come home, he'd make better decisions. But actually, when he came home, he was more angry at us and more frustrated. And so his weed use continued. Now, he would hide it, but he then was caught. I got a phone call because we moved schools for him, so he wasn't at his old school when he came back. Got a phone call from the sheriff that our son was caught smoking marijuana, a vape cartridge in the bathroom. And he admitted he did it. And at that point, we just said, this really was not going the direction we wanted. And everything in our house was kind of chaotic at this point. And if those of you that understand this, it is really chaos. You just feel like you're constantly treading water. And anyways, long story short, he moved out of our house, moved down the street in with some neighbors who took him in, because we just couldn't have him in our house. So you fast forward, in August of 2017, we sent him to a school in Chicago, Chicago Hope Academy. We knew the founder of the school. We thought it'd be a great environment. It wasn't a boarding school, because after he went to wilderness therapy, they suggested a boarding school. And those boarding schools we checked into were about $7,000 a month. And there was nothing that was within our budget. But we had him so he could go to Chicago Hope. It was affordable. It took him out of our environment, put him kind of to be almost like more of his own accountable mini adult.
I mean, and you have to keep in mind, he was asking to be emancipated for probably the past 2 years. And, you can't, he was asking so much. Our neighbor was an attorney that I reached out to her and said, here's the deal. He wants to be emancipated. Can we do this? And she said, well, really, that's usually in cases where kids need it because the parents are not taking care of their kids, right? So this, wouldn't have really worked. And in that period of time when he had left our house and lived with the neighbors, we were again under the care of another counselor who, once again, because we switched counselors because I was unhappy with the other guy, but this gal said right in front of my kids, what's the big deal? 75% of kids smoke weed. And I said, I don't really care what the rest of the world does. I can just tell you this doesn't work in our household. And so highly frustrated, because again, here's another professional that I'm paying, and you're telling me and you're demeaning me in front of my children, and you're sending a message that it's no big deal. It was really so frustrating. But she did get Randy back in our house. He did agree to not use for that summer, but that was under the assumption he would go away for his fall semester of his senior year to the school in Chicago.
But I'll backtrack a little bit. So when we first started having problems with Randy, and Heather and I are on the same page now. We've been on the same page for a number of years. Probably for 5-6 years, we've been on the same page. But before that, I was kind of like, well, he's just a young man. He's just kind of making poor choices, right? And I wanted to kind of give him grace because I understood how difficult it is to be a teenager, especially in today's world. But once again, I didn't have an idea as far as what this stuff really was. And so fast forward, he graduated, he did school online, moved back home for just a couple months. After he ended up going then to Boulder. He was accepted to Boulder, University of Colorado, Boulder. We just said we were not going to pay for his college because it was going to be about $55,000 a year. And simple fact is, he did nothing he made our life difficult for his whole high school career.
Well, and he also made it very clear that his intention was to go away to school and it was to party and to have a good time. And I'm very much of the mindset that when you go to college, I think having a good time is a great idea, but your priority is your education. Mm-hmm. And that's where we weren't seeing eye to eye, and he didn't really understand that. But before, I will say, when he came home from Chicago Hope, he was actually expelled from Chicago Hope. And that was because he was using in Chicago. We just didn't know it. And all of a sudden they called us and said, Randy's pulling pranks on all the other boys in the house and he needs to leave in 24 hours. So, to our surprise, we had this kid coming home who was extremely upset, who had been using probably on a really regular basis. We didn't know it. So he came home and was highly agitated, very upset, very concerned because he was worried, what's this expulsion going to look like on my record? Am I going to be able to get into college? So he was really hard to deal with. And then he was insistent that he wanted to smoke marijuana. And he would call me at the grocery store and say, if you don't let me smoke marijuana, I am going to kill myself. And I need an answer by 5:00. And I would text him back and I'd say, I'm at the grocery store. I will talk to you when I get home. The amount of threatening behavior to get his way because it's what he wanted was crazy. And again, we didn't know that marijuana could do this. So it was really hard and overwhelming. And then he did have a suicide. He said he was going to take his life, and he did leave the house. He dropped his cell phone on the front rug. This was the second time in 1 week. We had the police pick him up. We had them bring him down to our hospital. He was checked in on a 3-day hold. And essentially, again, nothing was ever brought up about marijuana. They basically just let him go. And we had him under the care then of a psychiatrist and tried an alternative school. So really another system where there was no acknowledgement of what marijuana can do.
So basically, I think what Heather's saying is we felt pretty alone at that point because you're fighting this battle as those of you that, have loved ones that are struggling with this is, you talk about it with other people and they kind of look at you like, well, you just don't smoke weed anymore. Well, if it was that easy, none of us would be here, right? So he went out to Colorado, and part of the thing was we said, if you get your residency, I think school is going to cost like a quarter of the price of being outstate. So he got his residency, he started doing community college. We'll go to the next slide here. So he got a job, he got an apartment. I moved him out there. Basically, after he was out there for almost a little bit over a year, he enrolled part-time at a community college, Front Range, and he was doing well there. So we would see his grades because part of the deal was, as much as he was on his own dime, we didn't pay for him other than for him to fly home. We paid for his cell phone and we get him a birthday gift. Other than that, he had his own money. It was his own spending. But we said, okay, if you go to Front Range and if you get B's or better, we will reimburse you for those classes. And actually, it was really cost effective. So for us, we thought at the time, okay, he's doing better. He was starting to work out. He was, hindsight's always 20/20, but we thought, okay, he's making strides. He's becoming a man, right? Well, COVID happens. Everybody leaves Colorado. So anybody who was there in Boulder pretty much left. He stayed. He worked. He always had one or two jobs at a time. So it wasn't like he was unemployed. And, he was kind of lonely then. So he came home, visited home a couple times that summer. And then, so in 2020, he kind of started to change a little bit. And it wasn't until 2021 that we had his first psychotic episode. Okay.
But I will say, in 2020, he came home 2 times in the summer, in June and then again in August. And we had probably our best visits that we had ever had. And I said to him, I said, you seem different. You seem more insightful. You seem more, I said, maybe you're just growing up, maturing. But I said, I am concerned about you. And he shared about his weed use. And I said, I'm worried you're self-medicating and that there are better medications for you. I really think it would be wise to talk to a doctor, but you're going to have to be willing to give up your high highs and your low lows. But he was like, yeah, I don't want to do that. And I'm not smoking that much. But when I don't smoke, I feel like I don't feel happy. I feel like, I want to, kill myself. He didn't say that directly, but he referenced that. And so I was unsettled, but I also knew he was not willing to do certain things because we talked all about that. So,
one of the big things he always wanted was us to be able to accept the fact that he liked weed.
Right.
And we said, we love you, but we don't like what you do.
Right.
And so fast forward, you get to 2020. He turns 21 in the fall. We start talking less to him. He has a job at a car dealership at that point. So he's doing really well. But
keep in mind up into that point, like in that fall, he quit a job abruptly. He just quit it. And he also was complaining of paranoia with his roommates. And he was like,
we didn't really know it was paranoia at the time. We just thought that his roommate had something against him.
But we couldn't, and I'd ask him like, well, what's the problem? And he could never put his finger on it. He could never describe it. He just skirted it and had this feeling that he couldn't describe. So I guess we just didn't know that that's what paranoia was.
So we'll fast forward. So January of 2021, he basically tells us he's going to be a rap star. Honestly, he had no musical talent whatsoever. He was always artistic, but it's like, okay, so basically he started really focusing on putting together an album, even though I realized it's not an album, it's more just digital recordings. We really kind of thought, okay, what the heck's going on here? But we still didn't even see what all these problems were at that point. 2 months later, we get a phone call from him that he's frantic, that the mob is after him. People are trying to get him. He has his first, from what we see, his first psychotic break. So we go out there, he says he wants help, and part of that's in the video, and that's where for us at least, the video piece was really important because we got all this footage that he took because he thought he was going to be a rap star. He thought when he makes it big, he's got all this documented footage of all of his struggles, right? So we didn't even know any of this stuff existed till after he passed. But in going through that, he had this psychiatric break. I went out there. I flew with him down to the treatment center in Florida. Because of COVID, he had to stay in detox for 4 days. He got into the treatment center. Within 1 hour, he wanted to leave, and he did leave. He had his own plan to get sober. He was going to help other people. All these things that we look at and say, that's really delusional thinking. And it was, but he was sick, and we didn't know how sick he was. So he ended up leaving the treatment center. He made his way back to Colorado for about 3 to 4 weeks. Everything when we talked to him it was vulgar, it was violent. He was going to come kill me. He was going to fly here. Anyways, all these things because we wouldn't support him. It was really hard. We were frustrated because we thought we were doing the right things. Fast forward, he gets suicidal at middle of April, goes into the Denver Health, and basically he calls himself in. So he calls the cops, says he feels suicidal. They come in, they put his gun in his safe, take him to the doctor, put him in the hospital, and because of lack of beds, he's out within 24 hours. Just very, very frustrating stuff. And at this point, we're trying to do things from here in Minnesota, so we're 1,000 miles away from him, and it was next to near impossible. So as I said, he's put on hold. They let him go after 24 hours. He finds a therapist out there, and he also finds a psychiatrist out there. I'm not, we're going on this a lot, but the bottom line is he's diagnosed with all these things that honestly, to have PTSD at his age, over what reasons, I don't know. He had a pretty good life and a pretty good upbringing. He's prescribed Adderall. So in June of 2020, 21, he's prescribed Adderall, which allowed him to use less marijuana. But the problem was we didn't realize we were not paying for his drugs, but we were paying for him to go to these doctors because we felt we needed to. We knew it was only a Band-Aid on a long-term problem, but we needed something to kind of keep him stable. So he started taking Adderall. We thought, okay, he's doing better, right? In June, he exhibited paranoia again. Thanks. Some friends were out there visiting. Some friends of his were out visiting their daughter. And one of the friends was also a good friend of his growing up. And he went and he took an edible and he went and hung out with these people. And then he kind of freaked out and he left. He thought they were talking about him. Well, obviously they weren't. But on July 16th, he spoke with Heather on the phone. He called Heather. They talked. He was excited because he was going to be starting a new job. And yet he seemed really down. So his last text he sent us was July 16th. And I don't know if you guys can read this. I don't know, Heather, if you want to read it, because it's probably really small.
Well, I'll read it. But at 11:19, he sent us a text and said, "Have a good night. Love you and can't wait to get this stuff knocked out and settled next year. Say hi to the girls too." And I said, "Will do. Love you too. Good night." And then at 1:26 a.m., he said, "My attitude with the music and everything has been way too self-righteous. I'm done with the music. I'm quitting weed for good and want to surround myself with healthy and happy people. This has been too much for me and for you guys. I've been running from my past mistakes and think it's time that I own up and start living a good life. Love you." And then at 2:09, which was just about 40 minutes later, he sent us a text that said, "I love you and I'm sorry for everything. I love Dad and the same to him. I wish I would have been a better person." And when I woke up Saturday morning and I saw that text, it didn't sit well, but I also think I was in denial. And I just texted him right back and said, "It's never too late for a fresh start. Today is a new day." Just trying to be encouraging. And then as the weekend went on and he wasn't responding, then we were getting more and more concerned. So eventually on the Monday following, my stomach was getting more and more upset. And I called the Denver Police Department and said, "Can you do a well check?" And typically, they get back to you pretty quick if everything's okay. And they didn't get back to us quickly. So I started saying my prayers. And unfortunately, at 9:30, they called us and told us that Randy had passed and it appeared he died by suicide. So from then, our lives just went upside down and we were heartbroken. Our girls were heartbroken. Primarily we thought this was all that he suffered mental health issues and was self-medicating. But the reality is, I think Randy started using drugs, the marijuana, and it changed his brain and consequently brought on all the mental health issues that he was struggling with. So we do have a video of him.
So basically on September 13th, a little bit, almost 2 months after his passing, Denver police sent us his two phones. One he had was a Galaxy and one he had was an iPhone. And he had two because when he went to treatment, I took the SIM card out of his phone and got a SIM card so I could access all of his accounts and make sure he could have all his bills paid. When he left treatment, obviously I had the SIM card in the phone, so he ended up getting another phone. But the reason why I tell you this is that we got this information. So it literally took me 2 months to get in the phone. The iPhone was really easy. It was 4 digits. I was able to figure it out. His other one was it was a pattern. It took me November 13th is when I finally accessed it. I kind of was pissed because every time you tried it, it times out for a certain period of time. So I could only do it so many times within the hour. So every time I wrote it down, the password. This last time I did it, I ended up doing one of the first patterns that I first did. And I just was frustrated with God. And anyways, all of a sudden it opened up and it was like, wow. So by getting into his phone, what it did for us was there was video footage on there and the information was really priceless. And it was kind of like an aha moment. It shed light on his struggles, his journey, and so many things that we really were not aware of because all we saw was a part of him, right? We didn't see the whole picture. And as we learned, when people are in psychosis, 40% of the time they can be quasi-normal, 60% they can be off or vice versa. So it's like, it's always changing. It's not like if they're going to be out in front of people, they can nice put on a good front. And
our son was a really good actor.
So if we knew obviously what we were up against, which was cannabis use disorder, which nobody ever said he had cannabis use disorder. They never said he had cannabis-induced psychosis. And this is out in Colorado where it's legal. They should really know better, but nobody ever talked about that. The most we heard from the psychiatrist was psychosis resolved, which we're like, what does that mean? Right. Really, it's cannabis-induced psychosis, not just psychosis resolved. But honestly, he never had a chance, nor did we. I mean, looking at it in hindsight. So I'm going to play this video here, and hopefully, let's make sure you guys can see it. This is the real story of our son, Randy, and his journey with marijuana. He believed marijuana was harmless, right? And helped him. Okay. Sadly, this belief ultimately led to his demise.
In going through Randy's personal belongings, we were able to put many pieces together. Looking at his notes, journals, and artwork, we were able to learn more about his life and his state of mind. Accessing his computer and eventually his phone, we discovered disturbing yet valuable and insightful video footage of Randy's journey the last 8 months of his life. We learned that he was experiencing cannabis-induced psychosis. Ironically, the footage that he had taken would not serve his intended purpose.
This just isn't going to keep working, and I'm starting to go a little nuts with it. So I'd like to keep my brain while I have it.
While Randy was out in Colorado, I was trying to find places for our son to go for treatment. Navigating that process is hard, overwhelming, and lonely. It had been an excruciating week, and eventually he was placed. At times, he thought he needed help, and then he didn't.
In his delusion, he even thought he needed to talk to the FBI before going to treatment. On March 19th, Randy and I flew to the treatment center in Florida. Because of COVID, Randy went to a detox facility for 4 days.
On March 23rd, he arrived at the treatment center. Within an hour, his therapist called us to do a virtual meeting. Randy no longer wanted treatment, and he created his own plan to get sober. He was agitated and irrational. Randy left treatment and almost immediately found someone who provided him with some weed. A few hours later, Randy called us and he was calm but unwilling to go back to the treatment center.
Against our wishes, and after a few tumultuous days, he made his way back to Colorado. For the next couple of weeks, our conversations and interactions with Randy were vile, hurtful, and threatening. It was as if our son was possessed.
So, yeah, life was pretty cool this year. I was doing pretty well. I started working on this music project, and things were going well, but then kind of just fell off for a sec. And I think I'm going to take a break from smoking for a sec because I'm enjoying it a little too much, and I need to focus on getting my job back. Well, I guess I technically have a job, but getting something a little bit more stable because I got hospitalized. So this is my last joint for a little bit until I record the album. Living in a decently nice studio, but I don't have any furniture now. So I mean, I'm living trap lifestyle right now, very basic compared to what I had. Shout out to mom and dad for caring. About to be a little naughty, so gonna try to get fully sober for a little bit. We got to give Miss Mary a break. One more night and I think we'll be done. You never really know. It's hard to fight the feeling. So today's vlog is first day sober, so we're gonna be on alert. Yeah, so that gun purchase is more out of some paranoia that I've had.
From the video footage Randy was capturing, he states that he is taking a break from weed. He reflects on the paranoia and psychosis that he experienced in March, as well as the struggles he's endured starting at the age of 15.
Growing up since I was 15, started dealing with some depression and social anxiety, and my main outlet for that started out as smoking weed, which helped me take care of that.
With ADHD, we had Randy psychologically assessed 4 different times by the time he was 17 years old. It wasn't until after he started smoking weed that professionals added anxiety and depression to his diagnosis.
For the next year, as I tried to get sober, I really struggled with myself. I couldn't socialize with other kids the same way I could if I was smoking weed. I was just frustrated with myself because I was hitting all my goals. Like I was working out. It just wasn't like getting the results. I decided to start smoking again after that. I was like, you know what? I'm going to make music, or I'm going to at least try. Because growing up, one thing that got me through like all of this situations was music. All of a sudden, I had this like paranoia kick in that the cops were coming after me, that musicians were going to be coming after me. And so I didn't know what to do, and I thought I was going to die. And I was pacing back this hallway here, just going back and forth to that window, checking to make sure no one was coming to kill me. Ran down to my garage, got in my car. I like got stuck in the snow somewhere because it was a bad storm. And basically my car got stuck and I had to go on foot. It was the scariest experience of my life. And I was in the snowstorm for about 24 hours. And I was still paranoid, thinking people were after me. I was in full-blown psychosis. And during the snowstorm, it got so cold that I was shivering and sweating at the same time. For that, I called my parents and was like, hey, like something bad is happening. Like I need help. And there's just something triggered in my brain during one of those experiences when I talked with them that brought back all of this trauma and all of this like stuff that I caused with them. I've been trying to quit smoking weed. It's really hard because growing up, I was always such a pro weed guy. And I think cannabis does wonders for some people. And maybe at some point in my life, it will be present again. But I have so much stuff I need to figure out. I'm 21 now and hope to live to be, living in my 80s, 90s, So I guess it's all how I play my cards here. All I see around me is addiction and pain. All I see around me is addiction and pain. You guys being the first label that I've reached out to, outside of a little bit of an error before for me being too high. And I am a 21-year-old entrepreneur, and I'm going to put together a little video here to tell you a little bit more about myself and why you should work with me. Hey, Mom, it's Randy. Just wanted to wish you a happy Mother's Day and hope you're having a good one. Love you and talk to you soon. Bye-bye. Between now and then, it's saving up money to market and coming up with ideas. So I'm very excited and cheers. We've officially been working on this project for like 7 or 8 months. I can't really count right now. Hey, Dad. Happy Father's Day. Just wanted to say I'm really blessed to have you as my dad. I know it's been kind of a crazy year, but I hope that we get to see each other here at the end of the summer. I hope that you have a nice rest of your day, and I love you. And if we don't get to touch base, I'm really glad you're my dad. All right. Bye-bye. Yeah, it's Father's Day, and it really sucks not being able to be home. Shout out to my dad for everything he's done for me, and especially with everything that's gone down this year. I actually got pretty down, and then listened to the song Cats in the Cradle and got even more down because, I really haven't turned out to be much like my dad. But the cool thing about all this is I was like pretty sad because I haven't been home in like a year. And all of a sudden I throw on the song Crazy Train. And I was like, you know what? At least I'm not alone, This is the last day of recording. Man, I'm excited to get the JTC. It's the last day of June, I think, the 30th. And we're trying to make some corrections, but overall it's starting to sound dope. So thank God. And thank all my inspiration in the process of making this. And shout out to anyone who's enjoying it once I post it and once I drop it. And shout out to anyone who makes this documentary happen that I'm filming for, that pray to God I'll be alive for, Seriously.
Hey, it's your son calling you back. But yeah, I'm just in between filmings right now, and then I'm probably gonna knock some hours out for my boss tonight. Yeah, I'm excited just for getting ready for doing my new clothing thing, and just kind of getting ready for this next year here. So a lot of stuff in the work. But it was good to see you guys face the other day, and hopefully I'll be seeing you guys at the end of August. Hope you guys have a good one, and we'll talk soon. All right, bye-bye.
This is the full ashtray from the album, like the second half of the album.
Kept me warm. You gave my life to me. You set me free. You set me free. The finest years I ever knew were all the years I had with you. And I would give anything I own. Give up my life, my heart, my home. I would give everything I own just to have you back again. You taught me how to love, what it's all, what it's all.
Randy's monument is done and it looks really nice. I know he'd be proud.
We miss our son dearly, and this video was incredibly difficult for us to create. However, we find comfort and hope knowing that our son's story will help other people from experience such tragedy.
The pain that can't let go.
Sort of things here. Okay. So that's kind of a heavy video, but honestly, it was a gift that we were given. And given that gift, it really has propelled us and given us energy and love and I don't know, all these things to try to share that with other people so that other families don't have to experience that tragedy. Let me get my other slide here. If I go to share. There you go. Okay. So I'll share this here and we'll kind of just go through as we wrap up and just talk.
And if there's any questions, we can address that.
Yeah.
But basically, you know, we lost Randy and we worried about Randy constantly. And with his loss, we gave up our worry and we had great grief. But we were given a lot of answers that a lot of people are not given when they lose someone they love to suicide. And we feel that it's really, really important because I truly believe had my son known how marijuana impacted his brain, he would have probably made different decisions. Does that mean he'd be perfect here today? Probably not. But he believed what the industry promoted, that it's good for you, that, you know, all the ridiculousness that they say without having it backed up. And so our goal really is to encourage kids to be themselves, to be extraordinary, and just be who they are without adding in any substances. And we want to really communicate the dangers so that kids can make informed decisions. So that's kind of been our goal. And we truly believe that young Randy would be happy with that work. And we're grateful really that we have what we have that we can share with others. And hopefully it will help others, families in the prevention.
We've been given a lot of signs and honestly, it's crazy, but I'm not going to go through those, but there's so many signs that we just, we've been very fortunate. So be extraordinary, be you. It's really talking with the youth. It's, you know, parents, communities, professionals, but we want people to know this is not a benign substance. This is not something that's, no big deal. I think we're seeing so many more people now gravitate to realize that today's weed is not what they thought it was. And it's unfortunately, it's taken too long to get this message out. But our goal is to, as we said, inform and educate people and try to provide, not that we're going to be doctors, we're not psychologists, but trying to direct people in the right direction. So like with Aubrey, I mean, Aubrey does awesome things. Maranon is huge. I mean, those are resources and services that really can help a lot of people. And we feel, compelled to not only do what we do, but to try to spread that, because
when you're in there, it's so lonely and it's so overwhelming and it's so you're in crisis. So you're in chaos, you're in crisis, and then you're supposed to find a path for your loved one who needs the help, and you're just trying to keep your head above water. If I had all the resources that I have today, my life would have been much easier. So if we can put those resources out there and direct and guide people to other places where they can get the help that they need, then that's a positive for everybody. It makes us feel good and better about everything if we can be helpful to others, I guess.
So I think, what's the problem we're solving is really all that misinformation. I call it pot propaganda. I realize it's pot propaganda, but pot propaganda just makes it sound better because there's so much bullshit out there. And I pardon my French, but our son bought into all this because every time he'd go online, he'd find all these articles about how great marijuana was. And unfortunately, the industry has been so far ahead of all of us that they put all these things in place that people at first glance think that this is medicine. And maybe in the old days when marijuana was much less potent, maybe there was some medicinal properties. I don't know. But all I know is today, we see too many people, too many families that are hurting because of today's marijuana and its highly potent products. And we say gateway drug, but it's a foundation drug. I mean, anyways, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but so that's kind of why we've done what we've done. So from a family perspective, we've got 3 daughters. After Randy's death, our girls were close anyways. We've been a very close family. And when Randy was here, like Heather said, it was so much chaos. There was always so many things we missed out on with our girls while Randy was living here at home and all the problems that we had. But I can honestly say since he's gone, our family is closer. Our girls are closer. I think we're a lot more considerate and compassionate for other people and their circumstances. Nobody grows up, or no parent has kids thinking they're going to be addicts. And we really see the importance of modeling our behavior, even though our girls now are all 19 and older, is really modeling our behavior because that is really important for them. And they, we can't go back in time and change Randy's circumstances, but we thought we were doing the right things when we did.
Everything we tried to do, we did with his best interest, but our outcome wasn't always what we intended. And so, we did the best we could with what we knew at that time. But now we know so much more. So, and Aubrey's been a big part of that. She's helped us understand. We've used tools and resources from Every Brain Matters to help us help others. And we're really grateful for the community and the support there as well. And there's several of you on this call that have also been helpful to us.
And many of you have suffered as well.
Yeah.
And so that's our story. We have questions, but hopefully that when you first said 40 minutes, I'm thinking, how are we going to fill 40 minutes? But that's our story in a nutshell. And we really want to see the genie's out of the bottle with weed. We know that it's out of the bottle, but we really want to see states and families and people just have better respect for this and really hope that we can change. We're not going to change everybody. We understand that. But if we can just affect those people that will never know that we affected, then we've done
our job,
done something positive.
Yep.
So this is our passion. I guess I say hobby, but it's passion. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Randy. Thank you, Heather. That was very impactful and inspiring and just a heart tug, big heart tug. And we are very proud of you, and it's an honor to have you here tonight. And it's an honor that you even put our logo and stuff in the in your presentation. And please know that you are a family of Every Brain Matters, and we will do everything we can to promote you and get your message to as many people as we can.
We know how lonely it is when you're in that crisis mode, and we are at peace now. It's hard to sometimes talk about this or relive this, but there is a healing process that also is happening with us, and so that's
a good thing.
Your presentation tonight to me should be in every school in America. That's just incredible.
We really want to get it into the schools, and we have heard from the students. They say we hear all the statistics all the time, but to see your son and to see what happened with him makes a real impact. And it's not easy to watch, but
at least for us, it's not easy to watch because it's our life, but
if it can make a difference, then that's what it's all about. So we really do want to get in those schools.
So thank you for sharing your beautiful son, Randy, with us. He is absolutely beautiful. And we thank him for knowing that he was making those video recordings for a different mission, but definitely he is speaking to all of us tonight. And I know he will speak to a lot of youth across America and maybe across the world. So thank you. We will open it up. It looks like, Michelle, you have your hand raised. Would you like to go first?
Sure. I just wanted to say thank you. I am a substance abuse counselor educator in New Mexico, and there's several of us that work in Albuquerque Public Schools, and another coworker of mine led me to your site this morning. And so I said that I'd come to this because we were curious about, the site. We had never been to it before. And I spent a couple hours perusing the site itself, and the resources, first of all, are amazing. So whoever's putting all the resources on the site are terrific. We peruse sites all the time, and we don't find a lot that are that in depth with the addiction with marijuana and that specific. So kudos to that. And just to you as parents, we sympathize. I've been working with families since 2000 with substance abuse, and I've seen the escalation of marijuana just escalate over the years. And I especially saw it from 2017 and on. And just love and respect to you. And I've lost a child myself, not to this, but I know what it's like to lose a child. And just, God, the amount of courage it took you to do this tonight. And I really do think the message you did, the composure you had, this message could be so valuable to students, even when I'm working with small groups and small family groups. I think could be really impactful. So thank you for putting yourselves out there, and it was wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank
God
you.
bless. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, and I think as parents, it's so much easier to not acknowledge it and to put it aside, like it is no big deal, but then it can become a very big deal. And so
But in all fairness to parents, in all fairness, when Randy first started struggling with this, we kind of thought, oh, it's weed, we don't want him to do it. It's kind of like alcohol, right? You don't want your kid to do it, but you don't think there's going to be this landslide, I guess. And truly, that's part of why we're doing what we're doing, because we were one of those people that, oh, it isn't good that they're doing it. Those kids are stoners, but you don't realize that really, it's a bad road to go down.
Yeah, I don't think they understand how much it really does change the brain.
right. We certainly didn't, but
how can we take care of ourselves? That's a very good question. That's what we got to figure out through this. We got to figure out how to take care of ourselves, and Randy and Heather are a shining example of how to take care of themselves through this journey. So that's why we meet. So we can draw strength from each other, and figure out how to continue to walk this path with faith, right? And Peter,
Aubrey, like just talking about it and not being afraid to share and trusting and being vulnerable. Another thing is, I think you really have to take care of yourself, and you have to do some sort of exercise, walking, yoga, breathing, all of those things. Because when you're in this chaotic state and you feel overwhelmed, you've got to kind of focus a little bit on managing yourself so that you can eventually help others, right? And I think turning it over to a higher power, whatever that may be for you, is 100% a big key. There are many nights where my higher power is Jesus, and I look to Mary, and every time I gave my son a hug goodbye, I said a Hail Mary over him. And the last time I told him, that's what I was doing. And I said, when I can't be with you, she will guide you and she will be there. And if it weren't for my faith or our faith, I don't know where we would be. So that, I know it sounds sometimes like it's not doing much, but it can move a lot of things.